Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshuranmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Narayana Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye. So, in today's session, we will be concluding with the prayers of Mother Kuntī, and there are certain very broad themes that emerge from the prayers. And these are very, very powerful prayers because they encompass the entire, I would say, philosophical basis of Krishna consciousness. Very specifically, every philosophy and every part of, I would say, approach to Krishna has a certain methodology of being able to resolve issues in life. If you are a part of this world, what is guaranteed is that there will be challenges. If you are a part of this world, what is certain is that there are bound to be circumstances which would be completely unpalatable. We would not want to experience those circumstances at all. But being a part of this world means that we would be forced to experience those. So every philosophy and every kind of approach to come closer to the Supreme, be it the path of karma kanda, where it's fruitive activity, people are arranging for some kind of circumstance to come upon them. They have desires to fulfill, and then those desires themselves require the performance of ritual. While you perform rituals for the karmis, you cannot perform rituals without some amount of principle of bhakti. Even if one is trying to attain some fruits, even if you're trying to attain some fruits, could everyone go on mute, please? There's someone who has joined in who is not on mute. I'm hearing some static. Thank you. So, basically, even if you are a karmi, even if you have fruitive desires, and those fruitive desires have to be granted by the performance of rituals, there is a need for bhakti. In other words, to succeed in karma kanda, the karmi, the fruitive worker, needs to take on principles of bhakti. He needs to come in touch with principles of bhakti. He needs to dedicate himself in a manner which is being taught in Bhakti Yoga. This is very, very important for us to understand. This is very important for us to understand that karmis are dependent on Bhakti Yoga. They are dependent on Bhakti Yoga. Therefore, Bhakti Yoga cannot come from Karma Yoga. Bhakti Yoga does not have its origin in Karma Yoga because karmis themselves, for them to achieve their motivations, they have to come in touch with bhakti, they have to engage in the ritual with bhakti. In other words, even though they have an objective of wanting to attain some fruit of their labor, they are setting an objective saying, I want this fruit, and they are performing, they're engaging in activity. Even though they are engaging in activity based on attaining some fruit, the perfection of such fruit, the perfection of such activity is based on bhakti. Does this make sense to you? What I'm trying to say is, even if someone is a fruitive worker, they have no motivation to be selfless. They have selfish desires. They're setting up rituals. They're setting up the worship of deities. If you go to any Indian temple, most Indian temples, if you were to go to most Indian temples, you would find that the motivation of people there predominantly is to resolve issues. In other words, they come there with certain objectives. They come there with the objective of attaining positions. They come there with the objective of preservation of their position. They come there with the objective of attaining wealth. So Bhagavad Gita 7.16, where it says, Chaturveda bhajante mam. There are 4 kinds of devotees who come to me. Krishna makes this statement in Bhagavad Gita. He is not confused. He is not confused between the motivations of a pure devotee and the motivations of someone who is selfish. He is not confused. He is not bewildered. Krishna knows perfectly that this person has come to me, he has an objective, he is worshipping me in the form of the deity, he is doing elaborate pujas, the priests are being compensated All kinds of rituals are being done, but ultimately they are trying to attain some fruit. Either elevation to heavenly planets, attainment of a kingdom, preservation of kingdom. You see, the past 6 months in India was election season, and during the election season, you see so many videos in YouTube where the politicians are seen doing some kind of puja. Either it's doing some kind of puja, some kind of ritual to win in the elections, and then once they won in the elections, you again see the same politicians performing some kind of puja as a thank you note. Thank you for giving me what is to be given, because I performed this puja. So the point is, even if you want to attain a fruit, and you're worshipping the deity and you're performing rituals, the success of your ritual, the success of attaining your fruit is dependent on bhakti. You cannot attain your fruit without having sufficient bhakti, even though your motivation is distinctly material. Even though your motivation is distinctly material, you can't reach those objectives unless there is sufficient bhakti. It's not possible. So bhakti yoga is necessary for the fruitive worker. Bhakti yoga is also necessary for the jnani. We hear that the impersonalist is worshipping, he is basically following the process of jnana marga. And what is jnana? Jnana marga is basically the process of coming to a conclusion that all kinds of material manipulations and results are of no use. What is best lies beyond mere matter. The conclusion of the jnani is that what lies beyond matter, beyond the material world, is much better than the material world. Yeah? So this is very important for us to know that the jnani basically has an objective which is beyond the material world, and he knows that. How does the jnani attain what is beyond the material world? You would be surprised. There are personalities who pursue impersonalism, which is jnana marga, not necessarily all the time, but most of the people who pursue impersonalism, they pursue the path of jnana marga. Now when they are pursuing this jnana marga, you will find that they are worshipping deities. You will find them worshipping Radha Krishna deities. You will find them worshipping different deity forms of Lord Vishnu. And this is for the objective of leaving the material world and attaining moksha. In other words, leaving the material world. Leaving the world which is complete with suffering. The jnani has attained that knowledge that no amount of manipulation, being this, being here, being Indra, even being Lord Brahma of the universe, is of no use. This jnani has attained that realization, so he wants out. The jnani wants out. For that, they depend on bhakti. Their objective is to leave this world. They don't consider Krishna as being eternal. They consider Krishna's form as being temporary, which is an offense, but yet they worship deities. They worship deities for purifying themselves so that they could leave the material world. Without purifying oneself, you can't be outside of matter. How do you purify yourself? Deity worship really is a powerful way to purify yourself. So you will find them chanting, you will find them worshipping the deities. So the point I'm trying to make is, in every path, be it the objective of the fruitive worker, be it the objective of the jnani, there's a certain process to remove obstacles. They have their own ways of removing obstacles. Each of these paths have their way of removing obstacles. Through rituals, through having certain objectives of how to remove obstacles which come our way. Because they all know that being in this world is full of suffering, they all have certain processes to remove obstacles. In our system, we have a process as well. In our system, in the system of Krishna consciousness, in the system of Bhakti Yoga, because Bhakti Yoga is the final, I would say, it is actually the process through which everything else is engineered and everything else is being made available. Bhakti Yoga has its own process of solving obstacles and removing obstacles of life. And what is that process of removing obstacles of life which is a part of ours? What is it that we do? Anybody want to give some input? How do we remove obstacles? Okay, by chanting, yes. How do we remove obstacles? I'm asking about what is going to be your internal state when you want to remove obstacles? Okay, now our path of removing obstacles has been given by Mahaprabhu. It has been given by Mahaprabhu. So I'm going to explain that. The path of obstacles, removal of obstacles, has been given by Mahaprabhu. So could you put yourself on mute, Mataji, if you don't mind? Because there is some echoing from my side that I'm hearing. So what is the path which has been given to us? That path is being exemplified in the prayers of Mother Kuntī. The path which has been given to the Bhakti Yogi is being exemplified in the prayers by Mother Kuntī. The first principle she is discussing is that the objective of Bhakti Yoga is not to attain some result. It is not to attain some kind of an objective that we have set here. The second principle she's talking about is the objective of Bhakti Yoga is not to attain peace. She is practically telling Krishna that we have gone through so much and we have struggled so much. She's meaning herself and the Pandavas, her sons. We have gone through so much, but each and every time when we have gone through such troubles, you have been with us. So let these calamities come again and again. She is not asking for peace. There's a very, very important lesson when you're practicing Bhakti Yoga. The objective of Krishna consciousness is not to attain a specific result in our lives. The objective of Krishna consciousness is not peace. Mother Kuntī is saying she doesn't want it. She's basically saying, give me problems, which is quite unusual. Who is going to go and offer prayers to give me problems? Yeah? Who will go and who has guts, who has such courage to go before Krishna, before the deity, before Prabhupada, and tell him that all I want is you, all I want to do is attain prema, all I want to do is to chant the pure name. If this requires that I experience more troubles, give me trouble. This is the prayer of Mother Kuntī. Can you imagine this prayer? Where she is setting a standard, she is basically saying, Krishna consciousness does not involve asking for peace. It does not involve asking for peace. Peace is not an objective of Krishna consciousness. Peace is given and is experienced in the mode of goodness. Our objective is above the mode of goodness. It is transcendental. It is above the material mode of goodness. Peace is given and peace is experienced in the higher modes of goodness. Yeah? In the higher modes of goodness, one experiences peace. In the higher modes of goodness. Our objectives are beyond the higher modes of goodness. We are beyond the material modes, totally. So peace is not our objective at all. Peace is a side benefit. Feeling peaceful, feeling freedom from anxieties, feeling freedom from any kind of, I would say, sadness and grief which is plaguing us from lifetimes is a side benefit. This freedom is a side benefit. This is not the goal of Krishna consciousness. Mother Kuntī is basically telling us, don't set low objectives. Don't set low objectives, because Krishna consciousness is far beyond the material mode of goodness. The material mode of goodness gives you peace. We are basically beyond the material mode of goodness, so don't set low objectives. These objectives come according to consciousness. If someone is in passion, they have desires to fulfill. And such a person goes to Krishna and asks him, give me this and give me that, because I'm missing this and I'm missing that. This is basically the mode of passion, because they are attached. They are attached to the results of their work. They are attached to everything. They are attached to the environment. And so when we develop desires, when we are in the wrong environment, we develop all kinds of desires. It's simply a symptom of passion. It's a symptom of passion. When we go before Krishna and say, Krishna, I can serve you if I have this, understand that there's some passion which is troubling us. Because wherever we are, we've already been given what we need for us to move forward. So Mother Kuntī is making this statement saying that don't ask for peace because I don't want peace, Krishna. She's telling Krishna very clearly, I do not want peace. There have been countless obstacles, countless problems that we have faced in the past. Countless. For the kind of power the Pandavas had, they were emperors, they went through all kinds of tribulations. For the kind of proximity they had to Krishna, they were cousins of Krishna. She was his auntie. Yeah? Krishna was her nephew. For this kind of proximity, for it being eternal servants, they went through tribulation after tribulation after tribulation. They went through all kinds of tribulation despite having such proximity, which is fascinating to see that Mother Kuntī is setting the standard saying, I really I do not want peace, because she knows that peace is a very low bar for someone who is trying to attain prema. Peace, feeling peaceful, is a very, very low bar for someone who has their objectives in having a personal relationship with Krishna. It's a very low bar. She knows that that comes too early. Every one of us have noticed this. We lose our anxious times, we lose our anxiety. Our anxiety disappears very shortly after coming in touch with Krishna consciousness. Have you seen that our anxiety levels dip when we come in touch with Krishna consciousness? Why is this so? It's because this is an early fruit. This is a very early fruit of coming in touch with Krishna consciousness and developing the habits that are a part of sadhana bhakti. The very early fruit is attaining the mode of goodness, or coming in touch with the material mode of goodness. Mother Kuntī is saying, don't give me peace, because Krishna, I don't want to be cheated. I do not want to be cheated because peace is not my objective, which is extraordinary. She is saying, give me calamities. Even if you put me through all the troubles that you put me through so far, I would still be finding it very welcome, because each and every time you put me through troubles, you are also close to me. How does this work out? How does this work out? It's an extraordinary arrangement. Please understand that this is an extraordinary arrangement. When devotees are put through tribulations and they are put through troubles, they are overwhelmed by material nature, what do devotees do? They have a process. The first part of the process is to introduce Krishna into that stream. They first think, Krishna, this cannot happen unless you are involved. Because in reality, no devotee, whatever you do, whether you are a part of a temple, whether you are practicing in a community, whether you are practicing on your own, no one should ever imagine that whatever you're going through is independent of Krishna. It cannot be. Never forget that. If you're being put through something, understand that Krishna is there. You should never look at your life simply as a matter of existence. You can't really look at some incident that is happening in your life and saying that whatever is happening to me is because of this or because of that person. No. The Krishna factor is always present. The Krishna factor is always present. So sometimes when we find that you're having a lot of trouble from a devotee, devotees can give trouble too. When you have a lot of trouble from a devotee due to relationships in the temple environment, it can happen in the temple environment. You can be in the movement, you can be in the part of the community amongst devotees, and that could be problem after problem after problem between devotees. Then one should never forget that there is the Krishna factor, which is also a part of this issue. It cannot be that people just have problem after problem. You can't really look at it in isolation. You can't really judge someone based on so you can't judge a circumstance purely based on how you normally judge circumstances in the world. So for example, if a devotee is going through problems from another devotee, there are two things that are very obvious. One, the devotee who is going through such troubles is experiencing some karmic reaction. There's no doubt. Some karmic reaction is being highlighted, some lesson is to be learned, something needs to be absorbed from that experience. It is being highlighted, it's being put on a pedestal, and the devotee is made to experience this. They see this. They see this issue, saying that this is something which is happening to me, and they are made to focus on it. And if you observe it from outside, what is so surprising is you will find that it is very insignificant when you look at it from outside. But that devotee who is experiencing that problem, that particular incident, thinks that it is an extraordinarily large incident. It is magnified. And when they are looking at it, the first principle, they are going through some karmic reactions, that's for sure. It is being magnified because they are supposed to learn from it. They are supposed to grow out of such circumstances. It is an opportunity for growth. And because it's an opportunity for growth, they are being allowed to see it in magnification. It's not small. It's not a small issue. It's huge. And they're experiencing it in such a way as if their life depends on it. Because they're being asked to learn from it. They're going through some kind of spiritual evolution. I would say, not to be insensitive about troubles for devotees, but then they're also going through some, what we call as purification from their conditioning. It is being expanded. So that is the first reason, is that the devotee is going through trouble because there is a certain karmic exposure in that area of their life which requires lessons to be learned, and those lessons are coming through in a very powerful but complex way. The second reason is that the devotee who is giving them trouble, who has either spoken something which is extraordinarily, I would say, hurtful, they have found that it was behavior which was not Krishna conscious, it was hurtful, that devotee has karmic reactions in such a way that they are not able to control themselves from reacting to certain circumstances. In other words, they are being used as an instrument. It does not mean they are right. It does not mean that the other devotee who is speaking hurtful words is purely doing his job. He is not. No, that doesn't mean that. It means that he is not doing his job. Yes, he is basically hurting the other devotees. He is hurting the other devotees. So you really can't say that this particular situation is such that you can't really take it as the other person who is causing hurt is basically an instrument of Krishna, so we should just look at him in that way. No, that's not true. That devotee has a propensity to hurt others. So he is being used because of that propensity. So there are two people here. One, someone who has to learn a lesson. So that lesson is being magnified. Then there is another person who is becoming an instrument because they have a propensity to cause problems. So both of these have to be looked at. But while we look at both of these in the environment of Krishna consciousness, we should never forget that there's a Krishna factor. Never look at this in isolation. We should always understand that there is a Krishna factor. There is a Krishna factor. Krishna is involved. Krishna is involved in this exchange. You can't really dismiss him because you are devotees. You can't really say that you're experiencing a material phenomenon of bad behavior by someone and you're absorbing that bad behavior and trying to resolve it and process it in a very, very mundane way. We can't do it. We can't afford to make that mistake because you need to account for Krishna. Krishna is involved and Krishna is directing that experience. He's saying basically that you both need that experience for you to grow and become better servants. So what is it that we need to do? Regardless of whether Krishna is involved or not involved, I'm making a statement which is logical now. Philosophically, he is involved. It's the fact. He is always involved in devotees' lives. But here's a very logical conclusion as well. Krishna is involved, but even if we believe Krishna is not involved, we can make him involved. That is our mind. We can tell our mind, Krishna is arranging this. He has arranged it for my purification. Krishna is trying to show me something. I'm supposed to learn from this. The moment you start involving Krishna in these exchanges and start wanting to see what Krishna's desire would be, Krishna will become involved. A lot can be learned from this. Many lessons can be learned. It would be extraordinarily powerful in terms of growing out of it. So the point I'm trying to make is, when a devotee is being put through issues, then the devotee finds it overwhelming. They surrender to Krishna. They basically look for help, saying, Krishna, I really don't know what to do. I'm completely surrendered unto you. I'm seeking direction from you. I really do not know what to do. In this particular instance of being overwhelmed by material nature, the devotee, for most part, gives up their false ego. If you are a PhD, you forget you are a PhD if you have a problem which is overwhelming. If you are extraordinarily skilled in a certain art, you forget that you have that skill if the problem is overwhelming. What do? You give up all your identities. You give up every form of identity. You give up every form of, I would say, false ego which is present, because you know that none of those identities that you thought you had can help you in the circumstances that you're stuck in. This is very powerful, because what happens when you're overwhelmed by material nature, none of the identities that we hold on to can assist us. The only identity which can assist us is the surrender process. The process of surrender. What is the process of surrender? The process of surrender is to basically depend on Krishna by internally first thinking that, Krishna, you have created this so that I can become a better servant. This is the process of surrender. When this happens, and you give up trying to resolve these issues because you can't resolve them, it is overwhelming based on your other identities. Even if you try, you really can't succeed, so you give up. Then we come closer to Krishna. The identity and the sambandha of being a devotee of Krishna becomes more and more obvious to us. We understand in life that nothing else is going to work other than this identity of being Krishna's servant. Nothing else works. This is the process of surrender. So what has Mother Kuntī seen here? She has seen that every time there were extraordinary obstacles, the Pandavas came to the realization that Arjuna's skillful archery, Bhima's skillful use of the gada, the mace, the other Pandavas' skillful use of the respective weapons, all their power were useless. Each and every time the Pandavas were put through tribulations, they found that it was so overwhelming that all their skills were complete useless arrangement. All they could do was depend on Krishna. They couldn't do anything when Mother Draupadi was being humiliated. They could do nothing when Mother Draupadi was being humiliated. When she was being humiliated in the assembly of the Kurus, they were stripping her naked, which is unheard of. In that is Vedic society. You just can't go to that extent of humiliating a woman, especially a queen, especially, someone who is as exalted as she is. She was born out of the fire. She was not an ordinary person. So they went around and they had fallen so much that they were wanting to humiliate her. All the weapons of the Pandavas could do nothing in that circumstance. Only Krishna could save. So what was the circumstance being seen by Mother Kuntī? She saw very clearly, when trouble comes, none of what we have mattered. The only thing that mattered was the identity of being your servants. None of what we had mattered. What mattered was the identity of being your servants. So when there's overwhelming trouble, all the identities of this world disappear. The only identity that remains is Krishna, I am your servant. You go and hold on to Krishna's lotus feet. You hold on to Radharani's lotus feet, saying, I am your servant. Save me. When we do that, our identity and our sambandha with Krishna, it becomes more revealed. Each and every time we are put through tribulations, we are put through challenges, and we choose to go and hold on to Krishna's lotus feet, knowing that nothing else is going to work, our sambandha with Krishna becomes more revealed, because we are voluntarily discarding the so many layers of confusion that we have accumulated over lifetimes. So that is being seen in this prayer. She's basically saying, when you give us trouble, we could do nothing other than hold on to your lotus feet. Because we hold on to your lotus feet, it reveals to us as to who we are in relationship to you. The sambandha gyan increases. Because sambandha is increasing, then abhideya, which is action, flows nicely. Because if you do not know who you are in relationship to anybody, if you go and work in the corporate sector, you don't understand your role. Let's say they give you a position, you don't understand your role in the corporate sector. Yeah, how would you perform your duties? So duties cannot be performed effectively and efficiently without fully understanding one's identity. Understanding one's identity is the process of Bhakti Yoga. Our way of solving problems is for us to chant what has been given to us, for us to call upon the holy names, and then accept things as if they are being arranged by Krishna. What is the objective of a devotee? The objective of a devotee is to attain prema. So the devotee says, okay, this calamity that has come before me, it is because Krishna is trying to do something. All I desire, Krishna, is to chant. I want to be a devotee. I want to chant. I want to surrender at your lotus feet. You please protect me in whatever circumstances I am in, because that is all I desire. Then Krishna takes over. He makes all the arrangements that are necessary for us to be peaceful again, so that we could chant nicely. Peace is not the objective. The objective is to develop a deeper relationship with Krishna. Our objective is to develop deeper and deeper sambandha gyan. Understanding the relationship with Krishna is our objective. Without understanding the relationship with Krishna, without knowing who we are in Krishna's relationship, how can we perform abhideya? How can we act? Until we know who we are properly, we are still having some amount of false ego directing us. As a consequence, how do we act? Our action is not going to be pure. It is not going to be, I would say, free from illusion, from mistakes. It's not going to be free from the conditional issues which every other living entity faces. Our identity needs to be known. So Mother Kuntī is basically making a prayer saying, give us trouble. Give us trouble, give us calamities. I'm not interested in peace. Peace is not my objective. Give me trouble, because if I'm having trouble, when my sons had trouble, all we did was come and hold on to your lotus feet. You were there. And you were far more closer to us during those times than otherwise. Why is it said that Krishna never leaves Vrindavan? Krishna never leaves Vrindavan because when he is physically present, in other words, when his Leela is manifest in Vrindavan, all the gopis, the gopas, they are having interactions with Krishna in the plains of Vrindavan. When Krishna leaves Vrindavan, so when he disappears from their view, he goes away, for example. When he disappears from their view, what happens? They can't see him in front of them, but he enters into their hearts. They can't see him in front of them, but he enters into their hearts. So now, even though he is away, there is even deeper connection because he has now entered into their hearts. Before he was in front of them, he was not in their hearts, so to speak. He was right in front of them. When he leaves, the pain of separation is such that he is pulled into their hearts. Now he has got even deeper connection. The devotee has even deeper connection. The Vrajvasis have even deeper connection, because now Krishna has entered into their hearts. So Krishna is either in their hearts or he is manifest in pastimes in Vrindavan. So there is no separation, but the separation itself is such that it is more intense than the presence of Krishna in front of them. So in similar fashion, when we are put through challenges, Krishna enters into our hearts in a bigger way. Every other identity is forgotten. All priorities are shaken out. We put all our priorities aside. We don't think about things that are inconsequential, which are insignificant. We start thinking deeper and deeper as to how we could take deep shelter of Krishna. Krishna is saying, I want to take deep shelter of you. This prayer of Mother Kuntī is basically telling us the process of solving issues in devotional service. This is how we remove obstacles. We remove obstacles by the process of surrender. We remove obstacles by first introducing Krishna into the obstacles. It's a powerful way to do so. Yeah? Obstacles themselves are taken as Krishna's arrangement. Oh Krishna, you have arranged this. In fact, as devotees advance, they have a culture of wanting to have Krishna's protection in a different way. They kind of take chances in so many different ways that Krishna can come and interact with them and protect them. For example, you find in the Krishna book, you find the cowherd boys not recognizing the widely opened mouth of Aghasura, the serpent Aghasura, as he is lying in Braj with his very widely opened mouth. All the cowherd boys are entering into his mouth. They have no realization because of Yoga Maya, but they're entering into his mouth. They have no fear. They have no fear because they also have this tendency of thinking that even if there is a calamity, Krishna is there. He is going to come. He is going to jump in. He is going to protect us. Can you imagine Govardhan Leela? Giriraj Leela, where he is lifting up a mountain with his pinky left hand. This is an extraordinary circumstance which Mother Kuntī is also meditating on. She is basically also meditating on the Vraj pastime where Krishna as a child lifted Govardhan. When he lifted Govardhan, the gopis and the gopas had lost everything. They lost everything. This is basically a gift because they lost everything which they had created and made available through their actions, their karma yoga. Krishna wiped everything out. With one flood, everything got taken away. Now they had nothing. They had Krishna. They were all with Krishna under the mountain. Then Krishna himself makes arrangements. And when those arrangements are being made, they will not interfere with Krishna consciousness. Our arrangements will interfere with Krishna consciousness. When Krishna is making arrangements, it will not interfere with Krishna consciousness. So the Pandavas consistently accepted Krishna's arrangements. They consistently accepted everything as Krishna's arrangements. They went through all kinds of humiliation, despite the fact that they were extraordinarily qualified. But with realization that even though I have this qualification, I can't act, I'm powerless, it's Krishna's mercy. So Mother Kuntī is basically making a statement saying, don't give me peace, give me calamities. Because she has realized that when there are calamities, one takes deeper shelter of Krishna. Krishna goes in the heart, one is meditating, there's great intensity. This is also the reason why the Bhagavad Gita was spoken on the battlefield, because it's so complex. When you enter the battlefield, what are you thinking of? You're thinking of either coming out alive or dead. There are only two options. You can't live on the battlefield. Can you really live on the battlefield? It's either you dying or your enemy dying. Yeah, it's one of them. It's just a matter of life and death. It's simple. The battlefield is simple because the outcome is binary. We use the word binary to say it's 0, 1. Yeah, it's a binary outcome. It's either yes or no. It's easy to understand. Yeah. That's exactly what it is on the battlefield. Bhagavad Gita was spoken specifically so because they did not have 10 different options of life. They did not have 10 different options of maybe I can do this, maybe I can do that. No. It was a very clear-cut situation where you could either be alive or you could be dead, and it was basically given in circumstances where it was very complex. The mind was not cluttered. The mind was not cluttered. They did not have 10 different options. So quite fascinating to see Mother Kuntī making this statement. What is more fascinating, and this is so fascinating because she has lost her grandchildren. You know, this grandmother, Mother Kuntī, has lost all her grandchildren. But yet, her faith is not shaken. She is coming forth and saying, give me more. Because each and every time you give me more trouble, you are entering into my heart. I am overwhelmed. I'm giving up this identity of being a queen. I'm giving up this identity of being the mother of great warriors. I'm giving up this identity of being, the wife of an erstwhile great warrior. I'm giving up all these identities, and only thing I can remember when there's trouble is that I'm related to you. So that relationship, that Sambandha Gyan becomes very clear. So this is our process. When we get overwhelmed, we surrender. When we are not getting overwhelmed by life, we surrender. What is the surrender that we do? When we are not overwhelmed, we chant with feeling. When we are overwhelmed, what do? We chant with feeling. And when we are chanting with feeling, and when we are desiring to come closer and closer to Krishna, then the objective of life is realized. So she is making it very clear, saying, don't set low bars. Don't set such low bars. Don't set a low bar of peace, which is the objective of Jnanis. We are not Jnanis, we are Bhaktas. Jnana Marga is dependent on Bhakti Marga. We are basically the source of success for the Jnanis, the source of success for the Karmis. As a consequence, we really can't set a particular objective which is simply at the level of the Jnanis or the Karmis. So a devotee really can't be doing justice to their position in the proximity of the Lord by asking for this problem to be solved, that problem to be solved, this to be given, that to be given, I don't have peace. We don't do that. The reason we don't do that is because that is practically setting a low bar for the process and the mercy that's been given to us. We have been given mercy to interact with Krishna. We have been given mercy to be able to touch Him. We have been given mercy to be able to take the food that He is eating, grab it from His hand and put it into our mouths. We have been given the mercy to basically, if you're a cowherd boy, for example, we read in the Krishna book, we see pictures as well that you climb on Krishna's back. Yeah? We climb on Krishna's back, Krishna climbs on you, but this proximity is the mercy that we have been given. Why on earth would you want to ask for things that are so low in their standard? Why do you want to set the bar so low? It doesn't make sense. Mother Kuntī is basically setting the standard. She is saying this is so extraordinary. Yeah? So what we will do is basically we will quickly read the verses, and once we read the verses we will basically open up for questions as well. Okay, just give me one moment, I'm just getting there. This is Krishna is leaving for Dwaraka. He is leaving for Dwaraka, and Mother Kuntī is starting to offer praise. I'm just going to read the English translation. Being beyond the range of limited sense perception, you are eternally irreproachable, factor covered by the curtain of deluding energy. You are invisible to the foolish observer, exactly as an actor dressed as a player is not recognized. What is fascinating is to see in Vraj, no one recognizes Krishna as a Supreme Lord. Mother Kuntī, being a part of the Dwaraka pastimes, she is recognizing him as a Supreme Lord. So there's such distance between Mother Yashoda and Mother Kuntī. You yourself descend to propagate the transcendental signs of devotional service onto the hearts of the advanced transcendentalists and mental speculators, who are purified by being able to discriminate between matter and spirit. How then can we women know you perfectly? So knowing him by transcendentalists and jnanis requires Krishna's presence. Even they who have such capacity for intellectual thought require Krishna's mercy to know him. Right? So now Mother Kuntī is basically posing the question saying, I am a woman. I am a woman, so how am I supposed to know you when they, the great transcendentalists, the jnanis, who are very well read and extraordinarily, I would say, scholastic in their capabilities, if they need your help in knowing you, then I'm just a woman, how am I supposed to know? So what we have to understand is, basically when Mother Kuntī is calling herself a woman, she is not putting herself down. She is not putting down the whole of women folk, because sometimes in the modern context there is a competition where we sometimes think that Vedic literature is biased, where there's constant mention of women being of a lower, I would say, capacity. But in this verse and in these purports, Srila Prabhupada writes that for the purpose of Bhakti Yoga, no one is more qualified than a woman in reality. The reason is, being in a woman's body, the conditioning is such that it's easy for them to depend on Krishna. It is easy for them to perform the act of bhakti. It's easy for them to cry and ask for help from the Lord. It's so easy to be in that particular body and to be able to perform that. The point which we're trying to make is, they are better situated than someone in a male body. If you want to make a distinction based on physical bodies, women are better situated to perform bhakti than a male body. And the reason that is being said by Prabhupada is because the natural state of dependence which they have in their hearts allows them to depend on Krishna more easily than a male. The male thinking process involves intellectual prowess. So they think and they use their intellect a lot more to process. They have to understand things through their intellect. The woman, for instance, has greater capacity for emotional acceptance. They can accept things through their heart. They can just accept it more easily. They don't challenge because the intellect doesn't interfere as much, because the conditioning in the woman's body and the subtle body is such that they don't accept it. But in reality, what is being spoken of here is that basically she is saying, and she's giving us the clue, she's saying, great transcendentalists and great jnanis need your help to know you. I'm but a woman, but she's considered so exalted. I'm but a woman, she's saying, how could I possibly know you? Let me therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto the Lord, who has become the son of Vasudeva, the pleasure of Devaki, the boy of Nanda and the other cowherdmen of Vrindavan, and the enlivener of the cows and the senses. This is a very important verse. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya cha Nanda Gopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Yeah, it talks about different levels of relationships. Krishna as the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. Krishna as the son of Nanda Maharaj and the other gopis of Vrindavan. And he is Govinda, giver of pleasure to the cows and the senses. My respectful obeisances are unto you, O Lord, whose abdomen is marked with a depression like a lotus flower, who are always decorated with garlands of lotus flowers, whose glance is as cool as the lotus, and whose feet are engraved with lotuses. This is a beautiful, beautiful verse. Namaha Pankajanabhaya, Namaha Pankajanabhaya, Namaha Pankaja Maline, Namaha Pankaja Netraya, Namaste Pankajangraye. Basically, this verse compares different aspects of Krishna to the lotus flower. Why the lotus flower? Why not the jasmine? Why not the rose? Why the lotus flower? What is so fascinating about the lotus? Because they're saying Krishna's navel is shaped like the folds of a lotus. My respectful obeisances unto you, O Lord, whose abdomen is marked with a depression like a lotus flower. Yeah? Who are always decorated with garlands of lotus flowers, whose glance is as cool as the lotus, and whose feet are engraved with lotuses. Why? Why lotus flower? Anybody? Why not a rose? Why not a jasmine? Or, some other wonderful, very fragrant flower. There are so many wonderful flowers in Vrindavan, for instance. In the flower season, you have champakas. There are so many different things. Why are we talking about lotuses? Yes. Yeah, go ahead, please. Sure. So that's all right. Don't worry. It was not a bad try at all. So don't worry. Basically, go. Okay, that's true as well. Our acharyas have this opinion. Our spiritual masters have this opinion. Our predecessor spiritual masters have given this opinion. Is that when the honey bee, the bee goes from one flower to the other looking for honey. The honey bee, when it is in material nature, it goes to a certain kind of flower. And that flower has wonderful honey, but it is surrounded by thorns. It drinks the honey from that flower, and when it is trying to escape from the flower, its wings are shredded by the thorns. So in other words, the honey that's available in one kind of flower is sweet, but the outcome is very painful when you go and drink that honey, because your wings get shredded. What is so extraordinary is that such a honey bee whose wings have been shredded after drinking the honey of a flower, of a certain kind of flower, it reaches the lotus. Once it reaches the lotus, it starts drinking the honey of the lotus, and the lotus basically during sunset closes the honey bee. It closes itself. When the sun sets, the lotus closes itself. When it is closing itself, the honey bee is trapped inside. When the honey bee is trapped in the lotus flower, it is drinking honey completely undisturbed. The lotus flower is compared to the lotus feet of the spiritual master. It is compared to the lotus feet of the Lord. It is compared to the Lord himself, because the lotus flower is extraordinarily protective and is also providing intense nectar for the jivas. The jiva who has gone to so many different places in an attempt to drink and satiate himself or herself by drinking some honey have had their backs and their wings being shredded. They've gone through all kinds of suffering. And then when they're searching for honey, they finally come to the lotus flower. The lotus flower has honey which is extraordinary, but it is very protective. It doesn't punish. It doesn't really shred the wings. It closes itself when there's sundown and allows the bee to drink honey undisturbed. This is quite an extraordinary description as to why we call the lotus feet of the spiritual master. Why do we use the word lotus? Why not rose? Why not jasmine? There are thorns. Maybe jasmine doesn't have thorns, but it's too small. Lotus, on the other hand, does not have thorns. It's extraordinarily protective, and the honey there is available in abundance, and it closes itself, and the jiva, the soul, is able to just drink that honey. So that's why the Lord is compared to the lotus. There's so many mentions of lotus. Pankaja Nabhaya. Pankaja Nabhaya is where his abdomen is basically has the twirls in the shape of a lotus. Pankaja Maline, he is wearing lotus garland. Pankaja Netraya, his eyes are very beautiful, they are like a lotus. Pankajangraye, his lotus feet. Yeah, he has the markings of the lotus on his feet, but has the qualities of a lotus, where whoever takes shelter of his feet, his lotus feet, they are given complete protection. They experience the bliss of drinking undisturbed. Yeah? So this is the beautiful explanation given by Acharyas as to why should we say Guru Pada Padma. Why are we using the word Padma when we say Guru Pada Padma? Lotus feet of the spiritual master. Because the wings have been shredded. We have tried so many different ways to be happy. Once we give up all of that, we come to the lotus feet of the spiritual master. Now it's protection, and there's peace, and there's honey. It's not without peace, without I would say pleasure. You know, we use the word sadhana in Krishna consciousness, and sometimes I wonder, we eat more than others do. Yeah? We constantly are eating, in one festival or the other, we cook. The Vaishnava culture of cooking and feeding is extraordinary. So we eat more than others. Yeah? Our eating standard is much better. The so-called Ekadasi is also a feast. Today we say today is an Ekadasi feast. Ekadasi is also a feast because there are people who have experimented and they have produced hundreds of dishes on an Ekadasi day. In fact, some devotees like Ekadashi food much better than the regular food, the prasadam. The point is that sometimes it's actually quite, I would say, ironic and amusing to hear the word sadhana, because we are not engaging in any kind of austerity. Tell me, what kind of austerity is a devotee engaging in? Reflect on it. We are not engaging in any kind of austerity. There isn't any austerity. You know, we basically have a lifestyle which is actually a very happy condition. Undeniably happy condition. It is a very happy lifestyle, to be honest. Everything is elaborate. It's much better quality. It is not poor quality. There is no compromise. There are no restrictions. What restrictions do we have other than the restrictions of wanting to be a proper human being? We have no restrictions. We have no restrictions at all. Yeah, there are no restrictions. These are very, very normal restrictions which allows us to be proper human beings, which allows us to be happy. So it's quite ironic when we use the word sadhana. There isn't a practice here of sadhana where, you know, there is no austerity. There is no Brahmanical austerity. This is not to say that there aren't devotees who don't observe austerities. There are many, many devotees who go through all kinds of austerities in trying to propagate the mission of the Lord. But I'm talking about general practice. If you want to just talk about it very generally, ours is actually it's actually very easy to do. It's very easy to do. Yata Hishikesha Kalena Devaki Kamsena Ruddhachiram Chucharpita Vimochata Hamcha Sahatmaja Vibo Tvayevanadena Muhurvipat Ganat. O Hrishikesha, Master of the Senses and Lord of Lords, You have released your mother Devaki, who was long imprisoned and distressed by the envious King Kamsa, and me and my children from a series of constant dangers. Yeah. My dear Krishna, your Lordship has protected us from a poisoned cake, from a great fire, from cannibals, from the vicious assembly, from sufferings during our exile in the forest, and from the battle where great generals fought. And now you have saved us from the weapon of Ashwatthama. So she is remembering all the times when Krishna intervened and saved them. All the times when he intervened and saved them. So what does this say? This says Mother Kuntī is not remembering the fact that her grandchildren have passed away. She is remembering the positivity of coming in touch with Krishna, where there have been so many opportunities where Krishna has saved them from all kinds of calamities. I wish that all those calamities would happen again and again, so that we could see you again and again. For seeing you means that we will no longer see repeated births and deaths. Seeing you, Vipadaha Shantutta Sashvat, Tatra Tatra Jagadguru, Bhavato Darshanam Yatsyad, Apunarbhava Darshanam. Basically, when she says seeing you, she's literally saying understanding the sambandha between the two of them. Yeah? Seeing him every time when all other identities are taken away, when the Pandavas forget that they are no longer weapon holders, they forget they are no longer Kshatriyas, they forget all the calamities, they surrender unto him. They forget everything and they surrender unto him. That is what she's remembering. She's basically saying, we get to see you. My Lord, your Lordship can easily be approached by only those who are materially exhausted. One who is on the path of material progress, trying to improve himself with respectable parentage, great opulence, high education, and bodily beauty, cannot approach you with sincere feeling. Janma Ishwarya Shruta Shribir Edamana Madapuman Naivati Abidatum Vaitwam Akinchana Gocharam. Akinchana Gocharam, very important. What does it mean? Akinchana means one who is a beggar, who has lost everything, who has nothing but Krishna. Akinchana Gocharam. Gochara means basically someone who is basically in circumstances or in the present circumstances of not having any other objective other than Krishna. They have lost every other objective because they are materially exhausted. They are materially exhausted. Material exhaustion is a prelude. It's a pre-qualification for Krishna consciousness. Material exhaustion is a pre-qualification for Krishna consciousness. The different objectives of life on this planet have to be exhausted. They have to be exhausted in such a way where there's constant depletion of interest in wanting to pursue goals which are distinct from Krishna consciousness. If goals exist in cohesion with Krishna consciousness, then that is considered to be very fortunate. If goals exist to be consistent and in cohesion with Krishna consciousness, then that is considered to be very fortunate. Yeah? What I'm trying to say is, it is not that we wander around with no objective. What we are trying to say is that if our own life is being constantly meditated upon in the context of Krishna consciousness, that is glorious. Those are practical steps towards material exhaustion. Material exhaustion means not having singular objectives which have nothing to do with Krishna consciousness. It's a pre-qualification. Because you can't have two different things going at the same time. It's very difficult. And it's wonderful. So it is not something which has to happen overnight. It's a gradual process where we develop higher taste, our thought process gets refined, our consciousness changes, and as we go from one level of consciousness to the other, as we reach higher and higher consciousness, we reach the conclusion that these objectives are not worthy. My obeisances are unto you, who are the property of the materially impoverished. You have nothing to do with the actions and reactions of the material modes of nature. You are self-satisfied, and therefore you are the most gentle and are master of the monas. My obeisances are unto you, who are property of the materially impoverished. Namo akinchana vittaya, nivrita guna vrittaye, atmaramaya shantaya, kaivalya pataye namaha. She is basically calling Krishna the names that are associated with personalities who have nothing to do with material objectives. So akinchana vittaya. Akinchana vittaya, materially impoverished. They have tried and tried. They have nothing. Their gifts and their treasure is not material. They have just discarded that. They are materially impoverished. Okay? Our acharyas have come in different ways. There is Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, the spiritual master of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He basically was an illiterate. He was a complete illiterate, and even though he was a complete illiterate, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who is the guru of Prabhupada, wanted to take his shelter and wanted him as a spiritual master and received initiation from him. And the reason was, even though he was completely illiterate, he was completely Krishna conscious. He was materially impoverished. He used to have one cloth which he used to tie around, and he was so, I would say that he was extraordinarily, I would say, detached to such an extent that he was so renounced. He used to pick up the cloth which used to cover corpses. You know, they used to live next to the river. People used to come to burn the corpses. And the cloth used to cover the shroud, we call it, when it covers the corpses. The cloth used to be discarded before the corpse is burnt. He used to use those. He used to use that. He used to just wash it in the Ganga. He used to wash it in the Ganga river, and then he used to wear that. He used to live under trees. He used to offer Krishna raw vegetables, not even cooking. He used to relish raw vegetables. He used to eat raw vegetables after offering it to Krishna. Because there were many materialists who were after him because they knew he was so powerful that they were thinking that if they come in close contact with him, they could use him to attain their objectives because he had such power. He was very powerful as a sadhaka. They used to be after him. So to avoid their company, he found a spot in a toilet. He used to sit in the toilet and do his sadhana because they would never come near the toilet. Yeah? Because it used to be obnoxious. Yeah? It used to be obnoxious. But he didn't mind. He was so renounced that he didn't want the association of materialists. That being in the association of materialists was so bad that being in the toilet was better. So he used to sit in the toilet and do his sadhana. Yeah? It was quite extraordinary. The point is, we have him in our lineage. We have Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who was an extraordinary scholar. Extraordinary. People who are native from England, English-speaking countries, who are scholarly, they find it very difficult to read his English. His English was extraordinarily, I would say, complicated for devotees who are native speakers of English, who are trained in English, who are scholarly as well, not just ordinary communication, but scholarly communication. They couldn't read any of the English translations which Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had put out, because those English translations, these are in English, used to be so complicated in the verbiage. Yeah? His word choices and vocabulary was so elaborate that it used to be very complicated. So we have someone who is so impoverished, and then we have someone who is an extraordinary scholar. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had 13 children, 11 or 13, I'm not sure how many. He was also highly placed in the government. Right? He wrote 100 books. The point is, there's such diversity in our acharyas. A lot of diversity in terms of their, I would say, ashram, in terms of their, I would say, material, I would say, recognition in terms of someone being a scholar, not being a scholar. They're all a part of a lineage, just to give us a sample of saying that none of it really is an impeding factor in Krishna consciousness. It is not an impeding factor. So basically what we're trying to say is, akinchana vittaya, nivritta guna vrittaya, atmaramaya, shantaya, kaivalyaya pate namaha. People who have objectives of Krishna consciousness, Krishna is the sole objective of these personalities who are materially exhausted, who are impoverished. They have nothing to do with the material actions and reactions, and basically even those who are liberated. Krishna is the sole objective. My Lord, I consider your Lordship to be eternal time, the supreme controller, without beginning and end, the all-pervasive one. In distributing your mercy, you're equal to everyone. The dissensions between living beings are due to social intercourse. Basically, she is also saying that you are the time factor. An atheist is also in touch with Krishna. An atheist is also in touch with Krishna. How is it so? Because an atheist recognizes destruction. An atheist recognizes destruction. Atheist recognizes the overpowering factor of death. Death is recognized by everyone. Whether you believe in a philosophy or you don't believe in a philosophy, you recognize the fact that there is death in this world. An atheist, even if he does not believe in control, realizes that at some point in time during his life he's going to leave, which means he's not going to be in control. There's someone else who is in control. So the skala, the time factor, is also being brought forth here by Mother Kuntī, where she's saying, I recognize you as someone who is also the time factor. And she is mentioning that you're impartial. Because if you were partial, you would have saved my grandchildren. My grandchildren died in this battle. So did the Kauravas. You are impartial because you are the time factor. You allowed things to perish per the dictates of time. You never intervened. You're impartial. So she is basically also alluding to the fact that Krishna was impartial even though he was the time factor. The time factor means it's supreme. Time is beyond karma. We have to understand time is beyond karma. If you have the question, I have done so much, but why am I not getting results? That is the time factor. A good example of the time factor is when a farmer works very hard and tills his land. A farmer is tilling his land. He works very, very hard. He chooses the best of seeds. He is waiting for the most opportune moment, and then he is sowing the seeds in anticipation that 5 days from now, 10 days from now, there are going to be rains. If rains don't come within 5 days, his effort has gone completely waste. If rains don't come in 10 days, his efforts have gone completely waste. If the rains precede his plans, his efforts for that particular year are done. They can't really work out. If the rains get delayed or they don't come at all, then his plans are thwarted. So the farmer is entitled. He is entitled to effort, tilling the land. He is entitled to picking the right kind of seeds. He is entitled to look at the time and say that this is when I'm going to do it. But the actual outcome is being controlled by when rains are going to come. That is the time factor. That is kala. The actual outcome the farmer has no control over. That's the reason why the Bhagavad Gita, we clearly talk about having no ownership over results, because we can't have ownership over results. The fruits of our action are not controlled by us. It's controlled by Krishna. So we really can't have ownership. We can only perform karma. We can only act. We just don't have ownership over results. This is again being highlighted by her here in this prayer. So basically she's touching upon Krishna at different levels. She's touching upon Krishna as the son of Nanda Maharaj, which is the highest level of relationship and the closest you can get to Krishna. Son of Nanda Maharaj, the friend of the gopis, the friend of the gopas. Then she is talking about Krishna in Dwaraka, the son of Devaki and Vasudev. Then she is talking about Krishna as the objective of those who are impersonalists and who are transcendentalists, who are after knowledge. Then she is talking about Krishna as the objective of those who are completely materially impoverished, but then they have him because their objective is beyond the material sky. Then she is talking about Krishna as the time factor. Even the atheist is connected to the time factor. So at different levels she is addressing Krishna. O Lord, no one can understand your transcendental pastimes which appear to be human and are so misleading. You have no specific object of favor, nor do you have any object of envy. People only imagine that you're partial. People just imagine you're partial. He is partial to his devotees. For the lack of a better word, he is partial. What do we mean by this? If you consider a schoolroom, a classroom, there are the teacher is putting in equal effort. The teacher is putting in equal effort in imparting education to the classroom. When the teacher is putting in equal effort in imparting education to the classroom, there are those students who are copiously taking all kinds of notes. They go through all kinds of struggle in understanding the teacher. They meet with the teacher after the fact. They sit and read and come prepared to the class before the fact. Now, such a teacher, interacts with the student who is so sincere at a certain level of proximity. Definitely the teacher would favor such a student in terms of giving more time, more energy, etc. after the fact. Yeah? But then if there are students who just don't pay attention, they may or may not come to the class, they don't take any notes, they disregard the teacher doesn't give as much attention to those students because they don't pay attention anyways. So in this sense, Krishna does give a lot of attention to his devotees because they only think of him. They're taking efforts to come closer to him. They're trying to interact with him. They're trying to dedicate their lives to him. So he is going to be taking in a lot more in terms of his interaction with devotees. But this is not partial. This cannot be called partial. He is impartial because he is only treating what is just. What kind of a teacher would be called a just teacher if they ignore good performing students and treat the good performing students and the bad performing students, everybody on the same level? That is not a good teacher. A teacher has to discriminate. The teacher will have to see that this person is taking such effort, I must encourage such a person. This person is very neglectful. I can't pay as much attention to them because they don't seem to be wanting to move forward. But I can make some arrangement for them. I'm going to give them equal opportunities. They can connect at a different level. So she is basically making a very, very true statement that Krishna is completely impartial. He is completely impartial, but he is partial to devotees because their efforts are extraordinary. Does it make sense? Is that in a relative scale, some people can make a mistake that he is very partial to devotees. It is not entirely true because he is paying attention to those who are seeking his attention. Yeah? So that's what they're doing. So now, of course it is bewildering, O soul of the universe, that you work, though you are inactive, that you take birth, though you are the vital force and the unborn. You yourself descend among animals, men, sages, and aquatics. Verily, this is bewildering. It's just bewildering. My dear Krishna, Yashoda took up a rope to bind you when you committed an offense, and your perturbed eyes overflooded with tears, which washed the mascara from your eyes. And then you are afraid, though fear personified is afraid of you. This sight is bewildering to me. It can't be understood. How is it possible that Mother Yashoda just bound him? This is the same Varahadev. He basically lifted up the entire planet. This is the same Lord Vamana. He measured the entire creation with 3 steps. But here in Mother Yashoda in Vrindavan, she binds him. She binds him. See, this is the beauty of Braja Bhakti. This is our gift. How could we ask for anything lower? Braja Bhakti is our gift. Our gift is to sit next to Mother Yashoda when she is binding this boy. This is our gift. This is the gift of our acharyas. This is the initiation that we receive. This is the gift and the blessing that we receive, is that we could sit and observe when we are able to, basically when Mother Yashoda is binding. This is extraordinary. Some say that the unborn is born for the glorification of pious kings, and others say that he is born to please King Yadu, one of your dearest devotees. You appear in his family as sandalwood appears in the Malaya hills. Others say that since both Vasudeva and Devaki prayed for you, you have taken your birth as their son. Undoubtedly you are unborn, yet you take your birth for their welfare and to kill those who are envious of the demigods. Others say that the world, being overburdened like a boat at sea, is much aggrieved, and that Brahma, who is your son, prayed for you, and so you appear to diminish the trouble. And yet others say that you appeared for the sake of rejuvenating the devotional service of hearing, remembering, worshipping, and so on, in order that the conditioned soul suffering from material pangs might take advantage and gain liberation. O Krishna, those who continuously hear, chant, and repeat your transcendental activities, or take pleasure in others doing so, certainly see your lotus feet, which alone can stop the repetition of birth and death. O my Lord, you have executed all duties yourself. Are you leaving us today? Though we are completely dependent on your mercy and have no one else to protect us, now when all kings are at enmity with us. As the name and fame of a particular body is finished with the disappearance of the living spirit, similarly, if you do not look upon us, all our fame and activities, along with the Pandavas and Yadus, will end at once. O Gadadhara, our kingdom is now being marked by the impressions of your feet, and therefore it appears beautiful. But when you leave, it will no longer be so. All these cities and villages are flourishing in all respects because the herbs and grains are in abundance. The trees are full of fruits, and the rivers are flowing. The hills are full of minerals, and the oceans full of wealth. And this is all due to your glancing over them. See, I remember something very interesting. I don't know how many of you have been to Detroit. In Detroit, I think when Srila Prabhupada first came, there was a building which was purchased by the devotees, and a temple was set up in Detroit in Michigan, in America. And that area where we have a temple, when we first started out, it was infested with drug dealers. We had drug dealers in every corner. It was one of the most crime-ridden, dangerous locations where real estate prices were so low because of all the crime that was going on. And this was Detroit. And then it's America, and in the 70s, there used to be shootings, there used to be all kinds of things. This was the circumstance, and this was the kind of circumstance which Prabhupada had when we first got our Detroit building. It was a palace. It was actually made for sense gratification by a very rich family, and the Ford family and some others contributed, and then Prabhupada got the building. Yeah? Now what is beautiful is that once Krishna consciousness begins in an area, when there's worship of the deity of Krishna, when there's Harinam consistently, slowly, steadily over the years, that particular area in Detroit saw all the drug dealers disappear. They saw all kinds of miscreants and all kinds of nefarious activities just disappeared because the temple came there. Not that there was any active, effort to remove them. They just disappeared because Krishna consciousness was basically taking its form there. Harinam was going on a daily basis. You had the deity being worshipped, and people were basically calling upon the Lord, and they were basically serving the Lord, and Krishna's presence became more and more expanded. The moment it became expanded, all the problems in the locality went away. The real estate prices started coming up again. So this is very important here, where she says, all these cities and villages are flourishing in all respects because the herbs and grains are in abundance. The trees are full of fruits. The rivers are flowing. The hills are full of minerals, and the oceans full of wealth. And this is all due to your glancing over them. O Lord of the universe, soul of the universe, O personality of the form of the universe, please therefore sever my tie of affection for my kinsmen, the Pandavas and the Vishnus. Now, she's saying sever my ties. What does it mean? Does it mean that to succeed in Krishna consciousness, one has to give up the family? The answer is no. The ties inside would be severed. The ties would be severed inside. Attachment would become affection. Attachment would become affection. There would still be duties to be performed to the family in a nice way. Attachment would become affection. One does not perform their duties with attachment because someone is related to them. They would perform their duties with basically affection because they need to be taken care of in a nice way. So severing of ties is a fact, but it is accompanied by the absence of attachment. It is seen that people are now going to be affectionate and duties are going to be performed. O Lord of Madhu, as the Ganges flows, forever flows to the sea without hindrance, let my attraction be constantly drawn onto you without being diverted to anyone else. There is no satisfaction once you come in touch with Krishna consciousness. There cannot be any satisfaction in worshipping anyone else. You can't. You would not be satisfied. It's a fact. Then, whether it's worship of material nature in terms of wanting some sense gratification, or it is even worship of some other personality, it's not possible. There is, and this is very extraordinarily exemplified by the action of Vyasadeva. He writes Puranas, he writes scriptures on every avatar, feels very sad and despondent until he writes the Bhagavatam, which is basically culminates in the whole aspect of Krishna Bhakti, Vraja Bhakti. O Krishna, O friend of Arjun, O chief among the descendants of Vrishni, you are the destroyer of those political parties which are disturbing elements on this earth. Your prowess never deteriorates. You are the proprietor of the transcendental abode, and you descend to relieve the distresses of the cows, the brahmanas, and the devotees. You possess all mystic powers, and you are the preceptor of the entire universe. You are the Almighty God, and I offer you my respectful obeisances. The Lord, thus hearing the prayers of Kuntī Devi composed in choice words for his glorification, mildly smiled. That smile was as enchanting as his mystic power. Thus, accepting the prayers of Srimati Kuntī Devi, the Lord subsequently informed other ladies of his departure by entering the palace of Hastinapur. But upon preparing to leave, he was stopped by King Yudhishthira, who implored him lovingly. Okay, so we'll stop here. We'll try and see if we can conclude this chapter in the following week. I just wanted to focus on the prayers of Mother Kuntī, and we went through a few themes. The first theme was that she was basically saying Krishna consciousness cannot have the objective of peace. Even if peace is lost, where calamities come, I still want to basically tell Krishna that if my reaching you and my attaining prema requires that I feel and experience calamities, so be it. So that's the first point. She's also talking about how a devotee resolves issues. A devotee resolves issues by first introducing Krishna into the issue, accepting that it's Krishna's arrangement. The issue itself is Krishna's arrangement. And then the devotee starts practicing sincerely. And then what we do is basically we find that Krishna gives us realizations, the lessons are learned, and then we move on. And the issue after a few years seems so insignificant that we end up wondering as to why we reacted the way we reacted. Then she also shows us the process of surrender. When something is so overwhelming, all our identities are given up. We give up the identity of being educated, we give up the identity of being in a certain position, because the issue in life can be overwhelming. Certain things can be overwhelming, where we just run to Krishna saying, Krishna, the only identity that is going to save me is my relationship with you. And when we run with a single pointed interest, more about us and him is revealed in our heart. So this is being shared by her. The relationship, Sambandha Gyan, is revealed. As the Sambandha becomes even more, I would say, evident, then we have an opportunity for us to be able to perform even better service. So we'll stop here, and then we'll see if there are any questions or comments, and either connected or disconnected. Haribol, is someone wanting to ask a question? Any questions or comments? I don't know if any of you were trying to ask a question. Can you speak up a little bit, Rajiv? I can't hear you well. Yeah. Much better, thank you. Sure, thanks. This is actually a very profound question, because if someone is performing a role in a corporation, let's assume that we are performing a role in a corporation, any corporation for that matter. And if you're performing a role in a corporation, unless you know what your identity is, suppose that someone gives you the role of a manager, but they don't tell you what a manager is meant to do and what is the relationship of that particular duty with the overall corporate setup, then you really can't perform your duties well. Similarly, if someone has a child but does not know one realizes that he's the father or mother of the child, yeah, then at that time they have the ability to perform the duty better. So it's a matter of identity driving duty. So in a similar fashion, if one understands Sambandha with Krishna, knowing what is my identity with Krishna, what is my role in Krishna consciousness, in the sense that, how am I and Krishna related, what is my eternal service, then that becomes more and more, I would say, the driving force of revealing what our motivations in life can be. So the point I'm trying to make is that sometimes we're driven by our conditioning, our likes and dislikes in terms of choosing what we could do and what we can't do. But once we transcend all of this and we understand our relationship with Krishna, the knowledge to serve Him is given by Him in our heart. That knowledge becomes more evident when our Sambandha is much closer. Does it make sense? It is like knowing your relationship with Krishna allows you to understand His preferences, allows you to understand His desires, and as a consequence, you are able to better serve Him than otherwise. Good. That is to develop the relationship. But it is also a matter of what you would do with your time here. What would you do with your time here is also directly connected to the extent to which you know your relationship with Krishna. Your intensity of focus in Krishna consciousness is going to be determined by your extent of relationship and knowledge of relationship with Krishna. Does it make sense? It is like someone has understood their eternal relationship with Krishna. Can they even waste one moment on this planet thinking about other things? They can't. They would constantly be meditating on exemplifying and trying to move forward and serve Krishna to the best of their abilities. They would also present themselves in such a way to Krishna that they would become beautiful instruments in His hands. They would not interfere with His arrangements, so they would use every opportunity to serve, and they would also be used by Krishna because now they don't interfere. They have nothing in their hearts which would interfere with Krishna's desire to use them for His service. That's more important. Sure. Haribol. See, here's the situation. Sorry, go ahead. Did you want to say more? Sure. So you're basically saying that you can't expect everybody to philosophize and process their experience in Krishna consciousness according to Shastric principles. They may just take it as a mundane experience and may learn nothing, and they could get discouraged. That's what you're trying to say. Is that your point? See, sure. See, someone asked me this question, someone senior, very senior, when I was visiting some place, and they asked me this question, and they asked the question saying that if you are bewildered about something, can I go and approach my guru and ask him for direction, saying, I'm bewildered about something, I need your help? Is it something which is an accepted principle where we ask for help from the guru in terms of asking questions so that we could move forward? And my answer was absolutely. But I also said this: it doesn't mean the guru is going to be right all the time in his responses. Because the guru may not be a good manager. The guru could be extraordinarily Brahmanical, where they do not understand the principle of money very well. The guru may not be a good Kshatriya from the perspective of managing things, where they may not understand principles of management, where they can give you the right direction and suggestion when you go and present issues to them. But because you go and ask your guru and you're trying to follow whatever he is asking you to do, Krishna will step in because you're following a higher principle of surrendering to authority. He would step in. He would say that yes, even though the people whom you're in touch with, whoever is managing you, whatever they're doing, all of this is not quite in order, because you're accepting it simply because of the fact that that is good for the purpose of cooperation, that is good for the purpose of authority, then Krishna would step in and make things much easier and simple in that congregation. What I have noticed is as follows. If someone is very intelligent while they are managing an enterprise, an institution, then in those institutions they will have even more complex problems to solve, because that managing team has a lot of capacity for solving problems. Because they have capacity to solve problems, a lot of problems would also be created there, because they have capacity. Their ego needs to be satisfied one way or the other. If the management team is very simple, they are very simple devotees, then Krishna constantly intervenes, and even though they don't do much, problems just disappear. So the point I'm trying to make is spiritual efficiency and material efficiency are two different things. One can be materially very efficient, but it may not work from a spiritual perspective. What works from a spiritual perspective is, for example, trying to accept the circumstance, trying to accept authority, trying to act upon what is being given at this time. This was shown by our predecessors again and again. There have been some very bad managers in the history of our movement, but there have been wonderful devotees who have come out of such teams. Wonderful, wonderful devotees have come out of such teams who have become great leaders. Yeah? The point I'm trying to make is their own ability to accept the environment, accept the challenges that are posed by the environment, their own ability to act in that environment was so extraordinary, and their surrender was so extraordinary to that particular environment, that they themselves are today great leaders in our movement, and they basically have, amazing realizations and sharing and so on and so forth. So the point I'm trying to make is that it is not, you can't really apply a general principle in the circumstance that you're talking about. Do you understand what I'm saying, Mataji? The general principle is to cooperate. The general principle is to surrender. The general principle is to accept the environment. Specifically in the environment that you are in and the challenges that you are facing might require some specific solution which cannot be discussed overall when you're trying to provide a general theme for someone to work through Krishna consciousness. Does it make sense? Yeah? That requires a little bit of a different approach. I'm just saying the general theme is to accept the environment. That is general. That helps everyone, regardless of who we are. Accept the environment, cooperate with the teams, sit together, because that principle of Krishna consciousness is spiritual efficiency. Spiritual efficiency means being together, doing things together, accepting each other's weaknesses and trying to compensate and so on. Yeah? But that principle, that principle may not be the only thing to solve the problems that you are talking about. Do you understand? That may require something extra in terms of perhaps understanding it deeper. We could take that offline. Yeah? Sure. Any other question or comment? Yes, Haribo. Well, first of all, yes, the holy names. The second is Krishna is always with us. He is a super soul. He's within us. Always. Regardless of who we are, regardless of whether we are initiated once or initiated twice or we are not initiated at all, Krishna is in the heart and is constantly listening and wanting to assist us. So the point I'm trying to make is there's never a moment when we are alone. Never. I was just fascinated by the fact that we sometimes see very insignificant, in certain ways I would say insignificant simply in terms of the function, in terms of the very insignificant animals like a pig, for example, which is constantly, immersed in filth and it is sitting in filth, it's eating in the gutter. That pig has a super soul who is sitting within and guiding its actions. We can't even cross the road if the super soul leaves us. We can't cross the road. We can't even do something very basic if the super soul leaves our presence. So the point I'm trying to make is Krishna always has us in his mind. He's always present. The intensity with which we call upon him, the intensity with which we desire only him, to that extent he is going to be manifest in our lives. Sure. Any other question or comment? I will do it right away. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll send it over. No. Thank you for reminding me. It's just that, thank you for reminding me. I missed out on it. Yes. Yes, I could. I'll do it by tomorrow. Sure. Thank you for reminding me. Haribo? Yeah, people do that. They blame Krishna as well. There is danger. True. Good point. So basically the point I was just wanting to make is that Krishna's presence is going to be completely felt. In other words, by devotees, it will be felt by devotees when devotees basically accept whatever they are experiencing is also Krishna's arrangement. It's a matter of acceptance. Even if we are not completely sincere, even if we make a statement to Krishna standing before him very sincerely saying, Krishna, whatever I'm going through right now is also your arrangement for me to come closer to you. Please let me see what is the best way I can serve you under these circumstances, because it is our karma, but when we make that statement, we are pulling Krishna into it. By pulling Krishna into it, what would happen is intelligence for us to be able to navigate out of such issues would come to us. Krishna is the giver of intelligence. He would give us intelligence on how to basically pull ourselves out of the circumstance. So he is the solution. He can never be the problem. So that's the solution. The solution is for us to be able to bring him into the picture. Sure. Thank you. Any other question or comment before we sign off? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Thank you everybody for joining us.